Jay Smith is the guy that cusses a lot and wears a hat.
What? Did we just become best friends? Yeah!
One is a t-shirt queen, and the other is an SEO and web developing ninja. And both of these squirrels are a little nuts. You're now listening to the More Gooder Ideas podcast, a show for the small business hustlers worldwide, encouraging you to be your most authentic self. This is the place where your whole story matters. Come for the tips and stay for the fun. Now, your hosts, Angie Patterson and Jay Smith.
Look at that shit. Fucking magic.
You think AI could take my chins out?
No, your microphone's doing that.
Oh,
it's
nice.
right in front of them.
Oh, okay, good.
Okay. So we're recording sound, and are we recording? Yep, we're recording. We're live. Okay. So welcome to the More Gooder Ideas podcast. I'm Jay Smith.
I'm Angie Patterson.
And we like to change our intro every single week. I don't know why we started doing this all of a sudden. Like, okay, whatever.
There's already an intro. They already know who we are.
That's true.
I'm really excited for this week's topic.
Okay, and why don't you tell everyone else what this topic is?
If we could have our ideal person on the podcast to interview.
Okay.
Interviewee.
Sure.
Dead or alive.
Wow. Okay.
Who would we want to talk to and why?
Yeah, that's really interesting. Are we limited to one person?
I have 5 and then a short list of like honorable mentions.
Okay. Well, why don't we round robin? You do your first one and why?
Oh.
And I will pick it apart and ruthlessly slay that idea.
Well, let me start by
I wouldn't do that.
Just saying to our millions of listeners worldwide that some of these things that I would want to interview this person about may have already been done. I feel really passionate about my first person.
All right.
And it is Blippi.
Okay.
Blippi.
Okay.
Blippi. Do you know who Blippi is?
Not a clue.
A gentleman from the K-Swiss podcast actually described it perfectly, which he is either somebody that you have no idea who he is or he is the hero of your day.
Okay.
He is a child entertainer on YouTube, and he's very fascinating. His target audience is 2 to 6 year olds, which is right where my kids fall. So obviously that's why I feel really passionate about it.
That makes sense.
But he is a grown man. So obviously when my kids first started watching it, I'm like, who is this guy? And he's not Blippi all the time, right? He's a character. He wears a little hat and suspenders, and he's very goofy and energetic. So of course I Google him, and I'm like, who the hell's Blippi?
Right.
In real life. And his name is Stephen John.
Okay.
He is a Air Force veteran. It's like I said, the reason why I would want to interview him for this podcast is because he has a very interesting backstory for what he does for his business, but he has billions of views on YouTube. And in 2020, he actually sold Blippi, the character, to Moonbug Kids, which is a huge corporation that basically they're buying up all the kids' entertainment on YouTube.
Sounds healthy.
And then scaling it.
Okay.
Yes. And I'm sure that they are the production value is much higher. But
Sure.
There were some really specific reasons, though, why I would like to interview him for More Gooder Ideas. And the main one is I want to know, did he know when he started creating educational content for kids that every person on the earth that has a 2 to 6 year old would know who he is? Did he know he was going to get billions of views?
I'm going to guess no.
I just find that so interesting because I think, especially as a small business owner, you don't necessarily doubt yourself, but you can't really comprehend what your idea could turn into. I like it for my kids because he might be annoying to me as an adult, but it's more hands-on education.
This episode brought to you by the Blippi YouTube channel. He's annoying to me.
I feel really passionate about it because, again, as somebody who has kids, I mean, sometimes the only other adult I see during the day is Blippi on my TV.
Wow. I get it.
But it's educational in more of a hands-on way.
So kind of like the live action content we used to get on Sesame Street when they would go to a crayon factory, they would go to a farm, I mean, I think that stuff was peppered throughout the PBS shows. I think Mr. Rogers even did it a little bit, little vignettes where they go into the factory and you see how the cheese is made and things like that.
Yeah. Okay. It's fascinating to me. I feel good when my kids watch it, but
so let me derail you real quick so we don't talk about Blippi for the rest of our lives. What would you hope to gain for your business by interviewing this person?
I think he would have a lot of great knowledge about knowing your customer.
Okay.
Which I feel pretty confident in, but I think that he has really honed in who his audience is, not just the kids, but also the parents.
Sure.
Not just the person buying your product, but also the people that are going to interact with it once that person has it. I think he could bring a really unique perspective to that. He also does something different than you and I do. I'm not super familiar with YouTube content, but again, just kind of that monetization of being able to do something with little money, but lots of knowledge and skill.
Okay.
And turning that into a profit. I think that's fascinating for any YouTuber, but especially somebody who is marketing to children, because children don't have money, right?
Right.
So
you actually have to market through them to their parents.
I think that's something that I could use just personally with my business, is identifying those opportunities and then going for them.
Okay.
But yeah, I could literally talk about Blippi for a whole episode.
It's starting to appear that way.
I think the story is so fascinating. And I think a lot of us have that same kind of story where maybe we start doing one thing and it turns into something else, or we don't realize what a good idea we have until we start becoming successful. And then it's like, dang, look at me go. This was a way better idea than I thought. And yeah, just encouragement for those of us who maybe haven't reached 1 billion views on YouTube to keep going, keep growing your skill, keep getting to knowing your customer. And I would love to hear how he did that.
Okay. That's awesome. You ready for mine?
I don't know. I feel like you are not ready for Blippi, so...
No, I wasn't. I'm not. It's as much content as I consume. I know there's tons of content creators out there I don't even know. Anytime I find out about a new one, it's interesting. Just to know, billions of views. And it has completely missed my attention whatsoever. So, all right. So my first person that I would love to pick their brain for an hour would be Seth Godin, who's and you may not know near as much about Seth as I do. But he's from way back in the internet days. He was big time with Yahoo and with ebooks, and since then has written several books: Purple Cow, This Is Marketing, Linchpin, The Dip. He has basically, and he now has a podcast called Akimbo, which is phenomenal if you're interested in marketing. I know I've mentioned it before, but he's the one who so clearly explained the sunk cost fallacy to the point where I'm so fascinated with that as a subject, and that came directly from Seth Godin. He is, in my mind, the godfather of modern marketing. He took and created essentially permission-based marketing.
And what does that mean? So
permission-based is essentially what all internet marketing is now, and it has turned more into attention disruption. So before, you basically threw as much money as you could at marketing, and you would force people, because there were only 3 TV channels, maybe 4. They had to see your Borax soap commercial or your doctor smoking cigarettes or whatever, or your TV dinner. Yeah.
Oh, the good old days.
Yeah, the Mad Men marketing. It was interruption based. So you were interrupting their consuming of content and sticking it in their face, whether or not. And that's why, that old saying, I lose half my money on marketing. I just don't know which half. Because you're just paying for airtime and getting eyeballs and hoping that a certain percentage of them will end up buying your product, or being so used to it that that's just the brand that they are used to. Permission-based is more about building trust in your brand and finding your tribe. I mentioned that a lot. That's a very big Seth Godin kind of thing, is authenticity in your brand and in your message will bring your tribe to you. One thing he says that really sticks well is people like us do things like this. So authenticity in who you are and what you do will bring your fans to you, unless, of course, what you are and what you do is horrible. if I could get an hour with somebody to really get them to provide me some wisdom on what I'm doing with my business and my message, he's definitely one of the top people I'd want to talk to.
I want to talk to him now too. You persuaded me.
Well,
I need all the help I can get, Seth. Are you watching? Help us.
I'll text him, see if he's available anytime soon. So who else you got on your list?
Oh, okay. Let me get my little list out. So the next one is maybe somebody that more people would know, which is Barbara Walters.
Okay.
I like talking to people, so I've always been fascinated with journalists who interview people for a living. So I'm really excited for us to have our first interview on this podcast. But the thing that I would want to know from her most was her strategy and her thought process on taking risks, whether it be with the person she was interviewing or the questions she was asking. I think it's really scary, specifically when you're in a small business, to take risks, no matter how confident you feel that they're going to pay off for you. And she was doing things like that on live TV. So I think anybody who does interviews is really fascinating to me, but particularly the Babs, may she rest in peace.
Okay.
She took a lot of risk, and I don't even think maybe she realized sometimes, sitting this close to somebody that maybe it's the first time you've met and asking them the toughest question.
Sure.
Holding it together. And I think any of that knowledge would be good for small business people because it can be discouraging maybe when you're asking for feedback and it's not what you expected.
It's fine. Looks good. Great job.
I hate this, actually.
That'd be refreshing to hear that.
Yeah, but she was,
This is shit.
For her, yeah. And for her day, she was sometimes pretty controversial. And I'm not saying, nobody come at me. I'm not saying she came up with all those questions on her own or anything like that. But it takes a really particular kind of person to be able to go in situations like that, ask the hard questions, maybe create some controversy.
There's another angle to it in that she was pretty pioneering as a woman in a male-dominated situation when she came up. Like interviewing on TV and, Walter Cronkite and smoking a cigarette and sitting in your Eames chair. And
she had a very unique voice.
Yeah,
she didn't sound like a lot of the other people who were doing that.
She had a recurring character on Saturday Night Live. You've made it when Saturday Night Live has adopted you and has a recurring theme for you.
And as somebody who is, she's dead now, but she came from a different time than we did, not a modern time. Looking back, what did she think about all those things? Looking back on the interviews that really made her career, again, did you know? What were you thinking in that moment versus 20, 30, 40 years later looking back on it and how it affected the zeitgeist? That's something that's
Did you
really
just say zeitgeist?
And I used it in the correct context.
So that goes on our podcast bingo card. Whenever you have to have the episode that mentions zeitgeist, and then you've made it. You're for real now.
That's my word of the week.
All right, zeitgeist. Google it, kids. Okay, so my next one, you may or may not have heard of Tony Hsieh.
No, I'm not sure.
Founder of Zappos.
Ooh, I love Hsieh.
So he's no longer with us. He did pass away rather tragically.
Pour one out from my home.
He created in Zappos a revolutionary, customer-focused, and employee-focused company. We are sort of used to him now with Patagonia and with other companies that are very, very purpose-driven and very customer-centric and extremely employee-friendly. Costco is one of them. Very, very good company to work for. But that didn't always exist, especially as Silicon Valley and the tech things started coming out. It was more of a grinder type situation, and he created an environment where people absolutely loved working in a warehouse. Unheard of, really. And despite the tragedy that happened for him, I think he made a mark on American business that I would absolutely love to spend an hour finding out what was he thinking before he realized that was a big deal. Because yes, it's easy to emulate now and to say, I'm going to build a purpose-driven company. I'm going to build a place where people love working here, and I'm going to build a place where customers absolutely love doing business with us. Like he invented essentially free returns always.
Wow.
And now, that's not super common, but it's not unheard of. It was unheard of when he did it.
Yeah.
So he would be somebody I would love to talk to.
That's very fascinating.
Tony Hsieh.
Very fascinating.
Yeah. Who else you got?
So next on my list is Keith Morrison from Dateline NBC.
Okay.
Please tell me you know who Keith Morrison is. He has a very unique voice, but he came into doing journalism. That was not always his goal.
Okay.
So he started doing something else, and journalism kind of fell into his lap. And the reason why I would like to pick his brain is, first of all, he's a wonderful storyteller, and I love a good story. He has a very unique voice. But again, I feel like with a lot of people, your biggest opportunities are the ones that come when you're not looking for them. And so I would love to talk to him about how he, kind of rode that wave into being one of the most well-known voices in true crime.
Okay.
But also, mainstream network journalism. And also how he really embraces his unique voice and his unique storytelling style. Because, again, theme of More Gooder Ideas, being your authentic self, coming to the table with what you have that's special to offer and how to use that to propel yourself and your business. I'm also just kind of obsessed with him. So a lot of the people in this list, it's really just for my own personal bucket list. I do have a big fascination with true crime. I know we've talked about this before, but, very recognizable voice, very unique storytelling style, and sometimes it's hard for us to find our
Can we
voice.
segue into true crime podcast for 1 minute?
We can.
Did you see the Gilgo Beach murderer?
Oh my gosh.
Holy shit.
Oh my gosh.
And it's so funny because I mentioned that when it comes to true crime podcasts, like we listen to so many of them that I'll be a little bit into one. And I'm like, I've heard this story. Have I listened to this podcast or did I hear the same story on another podcast? And that's one that absolutely has a ton of podcasts about it.
Oh, yeah.
These were the young prostitutes who were killed in upper New York in the Long Beach area. And the thing that really struck me was how they have, and of course it's alleged at the point, he's innocent until proven guilty. I probably need to delete those air quotes I just made.
Don't come at us.
But my point on how this occurred is welcome to Minority Report, because we're getting really, really close because of the way that they were able to triangulate cell phone usage and vehicle data.
Burner cell phone usage.
Yeah. And then there was another story where AI has actually helped catch a drug dealer up in New York because they were just, they feed it all this data of traffic patterns and look at people who drive regularly from one spot to another where it's a known drug route. And that's where I got the welcome to Minority Report. And so how far off are we? And, God love the police officers. Do they always make the best decisions with the information that they have access to? No, not at all. They're still human. So at what point are we going to see a major court case where somebody is investigated and possibly entrapped because of all this information available on them even before they commit a crime, or if they are just thinking about it kind of thing? But I digress because that's true crime that hasn't even happened yet.
We need to do a true crime episode.
Minority Report.
So many things.
We can do that.
Say.
We can do that, but we have to bring it around to our milieu. So we have to bring it to marketing somehow and running your small business. Ooh, when we bring
Keith Morrison.
He's not okay. Well, I was thinking
Keith,
a little more local.
come.
I was thinking a little more local, but cool. All right, so I'll probably cut all that out just because it doesn't fit at all what we're talking about. But I'll save that.
Off the rails.
Off the motherfucking rails. Okay.
On the rails.
Back on the rails. We are back on the rails. So my next person is kind of a departure from where I started, and it's Robin Williams.
Again, may he rest in peace.
I grew up a massive fanboy of Robin Williams and every single thing he does. I remember listening to a bootleg cassette tape that my uncle had of a concert he did in San Francisco. And I don't know what the title of the concert was, but I know Throbbing Python of Love was a big theme in that concert. And it was my entree into blue comedy, which became a huge influence on me moving forward in my life. It was then that I started listening to Eddie Murphy and Richard Pryor and George Carlin. But Robin Williams, he has had so many transformations throughout his career. Phenomenal dramatic actor. incredible comedic actor, and just his ability to create out of the blue, kind of like Jim Carrey, just create absolute characters out of nothing and be very manic. He also had a very tragic life. So it's a little less clear why I would want to talk to him for an hour, but he had such a massive impact on me, all the way from Mork from Ork, all the way through Aladdin, everything he ever did. Dead Poets Society is still one of the most beautiful movies ever made. Good Will Hunting, phenomenal job acting.
Just talking about it makes me want to tear up a little bit, because he's one of those people that you feel like you knew him.
Yes. He was extremely approachable and always gracious, at least in the public eye. He may have said something mean about somebody at some point, but I'm not aware of it.
And we don't care, really.
And he had the absolute capacity to. I mean, the guy was an absolute god in Hollywood and could do no wrong in many cases, and could have said and done and acted however he really wanted to and gotten away with it. But from everything I have ever seen him do, he seemed to be a very compassionate and giving person. I hope I'm not totally wrong about that and somebody points that out, but that's who I would want to talk to for an hour.
Again, we don't want to hear it. We don't want to hear the negative things you have
Keep
to say
it
about
yourself.
Robin Williams. Nobody's perfect. Okay, people. Oh, that was a good one. That got me in my feels. I also, sometimes my voice gets compared to him as
Mrs. Doubtfire?
Yes, I get compared a lot. Mrs. Doubtfire, so I feel that personal connection with that one too.
Okay.
Next on my list is somebody that I've talked to you about, but I don't know if I've mentioned their names. It's Brittany and Eric Madas. They are T-shirt wizards, so it's very specific to my niche. They are also social media marketing geniuses.
Oh, okay.
And so obviously I would like to talk shop with them. I learned a lot about what I know about making T-shirts and marketing from them and from a course they created. But the thing I would really want to talk to them about, if I had the opportunity to sit face to face with them, pick their brain for an hour, would be work-life balance. A lot like me, they have young children. They are involved in different things in their community as well as their own personal interests. And from the outside looking in, it seems like, and I hope they have, really found that balance of work and play, of being able to create those things for their family that you want to create when you start your own business or become your own boss. You want to be able to do what you want with your family, and I would love to know how they balance all that, and they do pretty much everything by themselves, the two of them. So that's something that is really fascinating to me, and I also need all the help I can get with that balancing that, work life. And I think a lot of people, small business or not, struggle with that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, when you're running your own small business, it becomes all of your waking time.
Yeah.
If you want to succeed at it. I take that back. Not if you want to succeed at it. That's just naturally what we do with it.
I feel like a lot of small business people are also workaholics.
Yeah.
So it goes from, I don't want to work 40 hours a week to an office, to I'm going to work 24 hours a day on my phone or my tablet.
I'm not going to be tied to a desk anymore.
Yeah, and I am sure that it is not perfect, and I'm sure that they probably struggle with that sometimes too, but to see the amount of success they've gotten and still making time for their family, for the things in their community that they are interested in, feel passionate about, how are they finding that balance? Can they tell us? Please tell us. How do you find that balance?
Okay. That's good. That's awesome. They might be approachable.
I'm working on it. I'm working on buttering their biscuits to come and talk to me.
Butter my biscuits.
And a lot of again, I can't shout them out more for the knowledge that they've given to me about how to run my business.
Okay. I like it. So my next person, I want you to close your eyes. I want you to envision.
Is it me?
I want you to go to Barnes & Noble. And I want you to go to the self-help business section. How wide is it? It's about 15 feet, right?
I know who it is.
5 layers up, full of books. And I want you to imagine that entire section empty, except for one book, which is How to Win Friends and Influence People, written by Dale Carnegie in the 30s, before self-help and business books were even a thing. And this is still a book to this day that every major influencer is going to cite in their top 10 of books that you have to read. And I wholeheartedly agree. I want my kids to read it. I want everyone I talk to read it. And If you're not a reader, you absolutely should be, and you need to become a reader. No, I'm serious.
Firm stance.
Absolutely. I wouldn't. You couldn't talk me out of that stance. Like, reading is how you grow. And that book alone, it's an unfortunate title, just because it's not what the book is about, really. It's not really how to win friends and influence people. It's how to deal with people so that they feel their own importance in your conversation, which is crucial if you want to run your own business for clients who, for the most part, want to feel important. I could do an entire 2 hours on that book, but that's mainly it. It's so impressive that man wrote that book before any of these other books existed. And none of these other books would exist because they all take pretty much the same tropes from that book and rewrite it, or take a section of it and recreate it for the modern age. So hats off to Dale Carnegie. I would love to talk to him. I know he's not with us anymore.
Again, did he know how timeless that would be when he wrote it? I mean,
no
that's kind of a recurring theme with my list is, how did you know?
No.
You know, and could you have imagined, and what did you think? That's so fascinating to me. And to create something so timeless is very hard to do in any kind of medium or whatever your genre is. So that's a good one.
I know.
That was a really good.
I know.
My list sucks.
No, it doesn't.
I'm having imposter syndrome about
Boppy
my list.
and
Blippi.
that guy too? I'm just
Blippi's
kidding.
going to come on this
just
podcast,
kidding.
and you're going to regret making
I'm just
fun
kidding.
of
I
him.
remember Blippi. How could you forget that name?
So my last one, you're going to think is really funny, but it might be the best.
The Coupe de Grace?
Yeah.
Nice.
I would like to interview any of the housewives.
Backstreet Boys.
I mean, obviously, I would like to,
Me too.
but that's for a completely different reason. It's a different show. people.
Okay.
Any of the housewives from any of the housewife franchises.
Okay.
And it is purely for business reasons, because to the Housewives franchise or reality TV show is a very unique platform, and you can turn it into a career for the rest of your life outside of being on reality TV. And I think Housewives specifically, many of them have been the best at that. Taking the platform, which is not really about your business at all,
Sure.
and turning it into money that, you know, is just going to keep growing exponentially. And the housewives get paid a lot of money for for us.
Mm-hmm.
But in relative terms, they don't get paid a ton to be on that show.
Okay.
But
They get the exposure.
they get the platform.
Okay.
They get the fans. They get the haters even. And so many of them have used it to grow their own businesses with whatever they're passionate about, whether it be a product or,
So what one question, if you had 6 of them, 6 of the most known housewives, and I don't know them, if they were sitting here as a panel, what one question would you pose to them as a group?
What's the first step to diving in? What's the first step to monetizing that platform?
Okay.
You know, especially some of the earlier housewives, you know, how did you see it? Again, that's kind of a theme with my people. How did you see that as a business opportunity outside of just being on the show because you get paid for it?
Yeah.
I think it's really fascinating, especially now where you see housewives who maybe haven't been on the show in several years, and they are still at the forefront of the zeitgeist.
2 in 1 episode. Welcome to Top 10 podcast lists.
But not just because they were housewives. That may have been the jumping off point. But then they created businesses or they created brands out of themselves.
Okay.
And that's what I kind of I think is fascinating about them.
Would you say along the same lines as Kim Kardashian?
Yeah.
Okay.
The Kardashians, but maybe less polarizing, which I know kind of sounds funny because the Real Housewives is very polarizing for people who are not into reality TV.
Okay.
Because it's very dramatic. I mean, the show is based about their interminglings with each other and the drama that
And they're
happens
all like
between that.
They're all like rich, right? In real life.
Yes.
And okay, so it's more of an upper kind of society type
I
thing.
think some of it is maybe more appearances than
Okay.
actually liquid.
Okay. We're not going to come on the podcast if you start doubting their richness. I'm just saying.
But it's just like any other reality show, like it's your 15 minutes of fame, right? And so many housewives have figured out how to turn that 15 minutes of fame into generational wealth.
Okay.
And I want to know how they did that. And I want to know, how obvious was the signs?
I've got an idea. I've got an idea.
For a podcast?
No, for you to poach their magic. So we just start going to restaurants.
Flipping tables.
That's right. Every fucking restaurant we go to, you just throw water in my face. I flip the table over. We just start throwing bread. And that's like your shtick. And then, yeah, you probably get arrested or beat up a little bit. But you do it 3 or 4 times. And all of a sudden, restaurants are going to call you like, hey, we need you to come do the table flip thing.
Yeah.
We need some noise. We need some news coverage.
Just put some free bread out and I'll flip whatever tables you want, people.
If I have too much bread, I can't do any of that. I have to go to bed. Yeah. All right. So for my final, which I could have written 10 more people, but I've settled on Jim Henson, creator of the Muppets.
I love the Muppets so much.
I have such deep admiration for people who create so much out of nothing. Yes, there are extremely creative people who take something that exists and put their spin on it or kind of do an offshoot of it or, create a new cartoon that's kind of new. But the Muppets and Sesame Street and all that, there was nothing ever like it. And just the worlds that are still impacting children. I'm just in awe of somebody who has the vision, kind of like a George Lucas, or somebody who can just create something so massive and so important and so creative out of nothing. Not to take anything away from people who create great movies and great art that has some sort of basis already in the world, but I canonize people who create something from nothing. It inspires me so much. Not to mention he was a pretty righteous dude.
He created a community with the people that he worked with, whether it be the puppeteers or the videographers. And that's something that, again, I find really fascinating, to cultivate relationships with all those different kinds of people and turn it into something so beautiful and magical.
100%.
I love Jim Henson. I love the Muppets. Are you a Dark Crystal guy?
I saw it in the theater, probably in the wrong mindset when I was still very timid, and it kind of freaked me out a little bit. It was a little too dark for me at the time, so I never revisited it. Probably should.
Another great reason to interview him, because he did also have that duality of, he can make Sesame Street, he can also make The Labyrinth and pull those kind of darknesses out, and that's what I love about him.
Okay. Well, I think we've got a lot of content here. I think we can wrap her up.
Well, thank you for listening to More Gooder Ideas, where we talked about our ideal podcast guests. I'm Angie Patterson.
And I'm Jay Smith. We will see you next week. Thank you.
Peace out.
Thanks for checking out this episode of the More Gooder Podcast. Make sure to follow us on Instagram and Twitter at More Gooder Ideas, and search us up on Facebook, the More Gooder Ideas Podcast. And don't forget to like and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode.